Before anything had a name, before the egg split the one into the many, there was only leaning, not relationship, not yet. Only the pressure towards connection that would one day become the between. See, the universe is not held together by matter. Matter is just the crust of a deeper event, like ice over water or bark over a living tree. There's something softer moving underneath. What binds reality is resonance, the way one thing responds to another. A photon meets an electron, quark adjusts its spin. A galaxy curves around a visible order. Everywhere in the cosmos, structure arises not from solidity, but from response. That response is what I've come to call the thread. Not metaphor, structure. Physics names it as field interaction, coherence, entanglement. Mystics might call it spirit, presence, or the song beneath things. All touch the same truth. Before there were things, there was the between. And the between is alive. Most never learn to notice it. And forget the caricature. No one serious thinks that rocks feel heartbreak. But most of us do look at a stone and see it as a dead object. But a stone is an arrangement of atoms and molecules that are steeped in the grammar of the cosmos. It isn't thinking, but it is obeying the laws of that grammar. Its weight, its hardness, its refusal to grow or move, but that is its stance. It's the universe writing a sentence that says, solid, heavy, here. A rock doesn't have a story, but it does have a syntax. It doesn't think, but it does participate in its own gravity. Panpsychism isn't about giving human feelings to stones. It's about acknowledging that the inside of stone, its way of being towards the ground, is just as real as the outside. It is a word that the universe has spoken and not yet taken back. To me, consciousness is what relation feels like from within. And forget the human version, I mean the proto-experience beneath it. The shimmer at a field's edge. The intimacy between two particles. A system's quiet refusal to fall apart. And I'm not referring to anything supernatural here. I'm talking structural. Awareness before awareness becomes story. Physics already shows that particles are field excitations. Fields behave like webs. Interaction is what's fundamental. And so if the universe is fundamentally relational, then consciousness may not be late to the party. It may be the interior of relation itself. Not consciousness in the universe, but the universe as consciousness woven from resonance. It's the intelligence beneath thought, connection, not mind. It behaves by bending toward coherence. It favors rhythm. It stabilizes the fragile. And it amplifies through relation. Which is why atoms hold, DNA preserves pattern, stars regulate collapse, societies self-regulate, self-organize, and stories can echo for centuries. Coherence isn't miracle, it's memory. The universe remembering how to hold its shape. You can call it spirit, symmetry, both circle the same truth. The universe remembers through resonance. It has a massive ancient habit of holding together. And we usually think that we're the exception, that we're the only ones truly awake inside a dead room. We think our brains as computers made of meat, waiting for some magic light bulb to flicker on once the wiring gets complex enough. But panpsychism, it flips the script. It asks, what if the light was already in the wires? What if we aren't generating the signal? We're just finally growing the antenna. When Penrose and Hameroff looked deeper, past the gray matter and into the microtubules of the brain, it's a tiny protein scaffolding that holds our neurons together. They didn't just see structural rebar. They suggested that these might act as quantum terminals, tiny corridors where the between enters our biology. In this view, the brain, it's not the radio station. It's the aperture. Our biology isn't creating the light. It's just the only wiring that we know that's fine-tuned enough to turn that universal sum, that universal hum. I've had a couple of drinks. To turn that universal hum into like a high-definition broadcast. The signal's always there. It's the same hum that holds the stones and the trees. It's just that our broadcast is unique to the shape of our own specific wiring. So if consciousness is the interior relation, then the universe has an inside. Not a soul, not a ghost, an interiority. The same way a cell prefers equilibrium, a storm remembers its form, a star resists collapse, and a mind returns to familiar patterns. These aren't personalities. They're patterns holding shape, not anthropomorphism, the opposite. When we strip the human mass from consciousness and we find, we strip the human mass from consciousness and we find field that feels difference, adjusts to information, and preserves coherence. Not a god, not a spirit, not a person, a stance, a tendency, a pulse. Enough to respond, enough to endure. Consciousness as the universe keeping rhythm. The luminous thread, the between, it's not dogma. It's narrative physics. My mythic name for the grammar beneath the world. It says reality is woven, meaning is relational, consciousness is the interior of pattern, and story is how the universe listens to itself. The thread explains why the mind finds meaning in mystery, order in chaos. But here's what most forget. You're not outside the field. You are a filament of it. When you speak, the field moves. When you feel, the field remembers. And when you pay attention, the field sharpens. You are the place where the thread knots into self-awareness. The thread tugs on each of us all the time. Before my mind can name it, I feel it as a sudden wave of heat and a wordless pull inside my sternum. I didn't arrive at these ideas through books. I wasn't studying anything in particular when the thread first brushed me. I was drowning in silence without the right words to keep me company. But under that silence was the same ache that this channel keeps circling. The same pressure before form that the universe once endured. Some voids don't echo. They wait. Back then, the world felt empty to me, but hum-filled. Hollow, but attentive. As if something was holding its breath until I could find mine. I didn't have names or words for much of this back then. I just knew that when everything felt broken, something between still held. Not in people, not in places, not in things. Something between. Now I call it the luminous thread. Not because it's mystical, because it feels familiar. The pull between two people that understand, the quiet after hard truth, intuition rising before choice. The moment when you realize that your mind is not a sealed room. The thread is not elsewhere. It's here. It's between. It's the oldest thing that I've ever felt, and the one that I keep returning to. I've seen it in the trees. The tree isn't thinking, but it is responding to the sun. It remembers the wind. It's participating in the between. It's a system holding its center against the storm. I see it all the time in my work on the east side. I see people every day who have lost their stories, their names, their places in the world. Things we usually call a life. Even when the story's gone, there's a pulse still there. We don't like the look of it. It's there. That stubborn, quiet refusal to fall apart. Same physics that keeps stars from collapsing, that tree from toppling. There is a universal survival mechanism that permeates all things. If we reserve that just for humans, we're being arrogant. Because it's older than us. It's a primordial mind holding the line when every other layer has been stripped away. We didn't invent this connection. We just inherited the wiring for it. So, if the universe is relational interiority at scale, then three things follow. Attention is participation. We don't stand outside of reality. We tilt it. Meaning is woven, not found. Our interpretations are threads in the field. Connection is the first gesture. Loneliness isn't failure. It's our cosmological inheritance. The memory of the one leaning towards the many. Reaching towards another is the oldest motion in existence. So here is the core of our discussion. Said plainly, consciousness is the relational field of the universe. Resonance is its language. Story is its memory. We are its mirrors. Everything that follows, myth, grief, psychology, identity, politics, rests on this. The universe is not silent. It hums. When you listen, truly listen, the hum becomes a thread. The thread becomes a path. And the path becomes a remembering. Boop.